The unseen threat, hook and suspense. The human colony on the distant planet of Verta 7 was quiet, peaceful, and safe. The settlers had built a small, thriving community surrounded by lush forests and tall mountains. They had been living there for years, far from the chaos of galactic wars. Life was simple, but the humans had made a home on Verta 7. They were proud of their achievements, but they didn't know that their world was about to change forever. The first signs came in the dead of night. A series of strange signals were picked up by the colony's communication systems. At first, it seemed like a routine disturbance. The systems were old, and sometimes space debris caused interference. But as the hours passed, the signals grew stronger, and the crew started to notice something was wrong. Captain Maria Rice stood in the observation room, staring out at the stars. She could feel it. Something in the air was different. Her instincts told her to be alert, but she had no idea what she was sensing. The quiet hum of the base was suddenly unsettling. "Anything unusual, Lieutenant?" she asked, her voice steady but sharp. Lieutenant Ander was busy checking the incoming data on his console. His face grew pale as he typed rapidly, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. "Captain, these signals are coming from deep space. They're not like anything we've ever encountered before." "What do you mean?" Captain Rice pressed. "I mean, they're not from any known ship or structure. It's almost like they're intentionally trying to be detected." Lieutenant Ander replied, his voice tight with tension. The captain's heart skipped a beat. If someone wanted to be detected, they were either very bold or very dangerous. She immediately ordered the colony's defenses to be ready, but a strange feeling of unease washed over her. She couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was coming. That feeling grew stronger when the ground began to shake. The warning alarms blared through the loudspeakers, sending a wave of panic through the colony. People rushed to their shelters as the earth trembled beneath their feet. Captain Rice quickly gathered her team in the command center. "Report," she demanded. "We've detected a fleet," said Lieutenant Andre, his face pale. "It's massive, and it's moving fast." Captain Rice felt a cold chill run down her spine. A fleet? How could that be? The humans on Verta 7 had never had enemies. They were far from the heart of galactic wars. And yet, here it was, a threat that they couldn't ignore. "We need to send out a distress signal to the Federation. Get reinforcements," Captain Rice ordered, trying to keep her composure. But even as she spoke, the sky above the colony darkened. The fleet had arrived. It wasn't a typical fleet like any they had seen in the past. The ships were enormous, dark, and silent, each one as menacing as the last. Their hulls gleamed with an eerie, unnatural sheen that seemed to absorb the light around them. As they descended into the atmosphere, the colony's communication systems went dead. No signals, no contact, only silence. The residents of Verta 7 watched in horror as the ships hovered overhead. They were powerless, unable to defend themselves against a force they knew nothing about. The invaders were not like any species they had encountered in their history. These beings were something else, something far more dangerous. Captain Rice felt a surge of panic. Her mind raced, trying to figure out what to do. They had no weapons that could stand up to the power of these ships. The colony's defense systems were nothing compared to the might of the enemy in the sky. "Lieutenant, what do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling for the first time. Before he could answer, a massive shockwave struck the colony, knocking everyone off their feet. The walls of the command center shook violently. Through the dust and the chaos, the sound of a terrible, otherworldly roar echoed through the air. The ground beneath them trembled as if the very planet itself was shaking in fear. "Prepare for the worst," Captain Rice whispered, though deep down she feared it was already too late. In the distance, the first alien ship descended from the sky like a falling star, its shadow casting a long, menacing veil over the city. It landed with a thunderous crash, and the ground quaked with its impact. The sound of metal scraping against stone filled the air as the gates to the ship began to open. It was then that the humans of Verta 7 realized they were not alone. The invaders had arrived, and they had come for them. The world of the humans, once safe and peaceful, was now on the brink of destruction. They had no choice but to fight back, even if it seemed like a hopeless cause. But what the humans didn't know was that this was only the beginning. The true power of the invaders was yet to be revealed. The call is heard. As the alien fleet loomed over Verta 7, its dark ships casting shadows over the once peaceful planet, the humans could do nothing but watch in fear. Captain Reyes stood on the balcony of the command center, her eyes fixed on the sky. She was trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding before her, but nothing about this made sense. Lieutenant Ander worked furiously at his console, sending out distress signals to the Federation. His fingers flew over the keys, but no response came. The alien fleet had blocked all communication. They were completely isolated, left to face the unknown invaders alone. "We can't wait any longer, Captain," Lieutenant Ander said, his voice tense. "We need help. If the Federation doesn't answer, we'll be wiped out in a matter of hours." Captain Reyes turned to him, her face grim. "I know. We just have to keep trying." But just as she spoke, something unexpected happened. A sharp, powerful pulse shot out from the largest of the alien ships, cutting through the atmosphere like a lightning bolt. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, and for a brief moment, Captain Reyes felt the ground beneath her feet tremble. And then, a deep voice, loud and resonant, as though coming from the very stars themselves, echoed through the air, carrying across the battlefield. "Humanity, your time has come. Prepare for extinction." The voice wasn't human, but its words were clear, chilling, and filled with arrogance. It was as if the invaders had already decided the fate of the humans. Captain Reyes' heart sank. She had hoped for help, for some sort of salvation, but now it seemed that all hope was lost. But far away, in the depths of space, the distress signal from Verta 7 didn't go unheard. On a far-off planet, in a hidden corner of the galaxy, the deadliest beings in the known universe were listening. They were the last line of defense against the horrors that threatened humanity. They were powerful, ancient, and feared by every species in the galaxy. No one dared to provoke them, for their wrath was swift and brutal. These beings had been in hiding for years, watching from the shadows as the universe changed. But now, they knew that the time to act had come. The moment the distress signal reached them, they made their decision. They would answer the call. The leader of these beings, a towering figure clad in dark, armor-like plating, stood before a massive holographic map of the galaxy. His eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto Verta 7. He knew what was at stake. Humanity had always intrigued him. Their resilience, their bravery, even in the face of death, was something that few other species could match. But now, they were facing an enemy unlike any other. He couldn't let them fall. With a single motion, he activated the command for the fleet to prepare for launch. "We will not let them fall," he said, his voice low and commanding. "We are the defenders. The galaxy owes them this much." The fleet was ready. The deadliest warriors in the galaxy, beings who had never been defeated in battle, began their journey to Verta 7. They had been in hiding for too long, but now, the time had come to unleash their power. It was a decision made not out of mercy, but out of respect. Humanity had earned it. As the warriors set course for Verta 7, Captain Reyes on the doomed planet had no idea that salvation was on the way. The people of the colony continued to prepare for their last stand, knowing that no reinforcements were coming. But unknown to them, a force was hurtling through space, faster than they could ever imagine, ready to deliver them from the brink of destruction. Back on the surface, the alien forces began to move. Armored troops flooded the streets of the colony, their dark figures casting long shadows as they marched toward the last remaining human strongholds. Captain Reyes and her team watched in disbelief as the invaders began their assault. It was then that the ground shook again. This time, It wasn't the footsteps of the invaders. It was something else. The sky above darkened further, and the sound of powerful engines rumbled through the air. Something massive was coming. Captain Rice lifted her head toward the sky, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, hope flickered in her heart. The most powerful warriors in the galaxy were on their way, and they were about to make their presence known. Preparing for war. The silence was deafening as Captain Rice and her team watched the alien forces prepare to strike. The once peaceful colony now stood on the edge of complete destruction. As the invaders marched forward, humanity's last hope seemed as distant as the stars themselves. They had no weapons capable of standing up to this threat, no allies nearby, and no way to fight back. But little did they know, help was already on its way. Light years away, the defenders, warriors from distant corners of the galaxy, were getting ready. They had long ago turned their backs on the galactic conflicts, choosing to remain in the shadows. But when the distress signal reached them, something changed. The stakes were too high, and they knew that they could not ignore the call for help. The leader of the defenders stood tall in front of his fleet, his eyes scanning the gathered warriors. His team was a unique collection of the deadliest beings in the galaxy. Each one was a legend in their own right, known and feared across the stars. They had fought in countless battles, but none of them had ever encountered an enemy like this. The leader, a massive being clad in obsidian armor, spoke with authority. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of centuries of battle experience. "The time has come," he said, his voice low but full of power. "We are not here out of mercy. We are here because humanity has earned our respect. They may not know it yet, but they will. We are their last hope." Beside him stood his second-in-command, a deadly warrior known as Cal. She was smaller than the leader, but her reputation for ruthless efficiency in combat was unmatched. She nodded at the leader's words, her gaze fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy. "We will arrive in time," she said, "but we must move quickly. They need us." The leader nodded, turning to the rest of the fleet. "Prepare for battle. There is no turning back now." As the defenders made their final preparations, the atmosphere on Verta 7 grew increasingly tense. Captain Rice and her team were doing everything they could to fortify the colony, but there was a growing sense of helplessness among the humans. They were trapped. The aliens had overwhelmed their defenses, and their chances of survival were growing slimmer by the minute. Inside the command center, Rice gathered her officers, the last line of defense against the invading forces. "We need to hold out as long as we can," she said, her voice firm but weary. "Our people are counting on us. We have to buy them time." Lieutenant Ander looked up from his console, his eyes tired but determined. "Captain, we've got one last chance. The communication grid is down, but we can still transmit a coded distress signal. If we're lucky, we can reach someone. Anyone who can help." Rice nodded, her mind racing. She had no idea if the signal would reach anyone. But they had to try. There was no other choice. "We'll try it," she said. "We have nothing left to lose." Meanwhile, far away, the defenders were moving at full speed. Their ships cut through space with incredible speed, each one powered by advanced technology that far outstripped anything the invaders could muster. They were headed directly toward Verta 7, and they would not stop until they arrived. Inside the lead ship, the leader stood at the front, watching the stars streak by. He could feel the weight of the mission bearing down on him. It wasn't just about saving humanity. It was about proving that the defenders were still a force to be reckoned with. They had been out of the spotlight for too long, and now they would make their return. Kale stood beside him, her arms crossed. "We are close. Verta 7 is just ahead. The time for planning is over. All that remains is battle." The leader nodded, his expression hardening. "We'll make sure they know that we're not here to play games. The galaxy will remember this day." As they approached the planet, the defenders could see the massive alien fleet in orbit, like dark clouds hanging over the world. The ships of the invaders dwarfed the human colony's structures, casting long shadows over the planet's surface. The leader activated the comms, addressing his fleet. "Prepare for landing. The enemy will be waiting for us, but we have the advantage. They've never faced us before." As the defenders entered the atmosphere, they could already see the first signs of battle below. Explosions rocked the surface of Verta 7, and the sound of blaster fire echoed through the skies. The invaders were on the ground, pushing forward with relentless force. But they had no idea what was about to hit them. The deadliest arrival. The sky above Verta 7 grew darker, and the air seemed to hum with a strange, almost unnatural energy. The first signs of the defenders' arrival were unmistakable. Massive ships, sleek and powerful, streaked through the clouds like meteors. They were descending fast, breaking through the atmosphere with the precision of predators locking onto their prey. Captain Reyes stood at the command center, staring out the window. She could see the enemy forces on the ground below, alien invaders flooding the streets, their massive armored bodies towering over the human civilians who fled in terror. The situation had never been more dire. But then, as if in answer to the chaos, the ground shook again. But this time, it wasn't from the aliens. It was something else, something far more powerful. "Captain, look!" Lieutenant Andrews shouted from his station, pointing toward the sky. The ships of the defenders were coming in fast, their sleek hulls cutting through the atmosphere like blades through water. The defenders' ships descended with precision, each one landing in a cloud of dust and debris. They were a sharp contrast to the alien invaders, whose massive, intimidating ships had now become a part of the landscape. The defenders' vessels were streamlined, designed for speed and stealth, with weapon systems far beyond anything the aliens had ever faced. The humans on the ground watched in awe as the ships touched down. A series of hatch doors opened on each vessel, and the defenders began to emerge. They were not like anything the humans had seen before. Tall, powerful figures clad in dark, shimmering armor, their faces obscured by helmets with glowing red visors. Their movements were fluid and deadly, like a well-rehearsed dance, their every step filled with purpose. Captain Reyes felt her heart race as she watched them. They didn't just look like warriors, they looked like living weapons. The leader of the defenders, a towering figure whose presence seemed to command the very air around him, stepped forward. His armor gleamed in the dim light, and his eyes, if anyone could have seen them, burned with a fire that could not be quenched. The warriors behind him spread out across the battlefield, ready for whatever came next. The alien invaders paused, clearly taken aback by the sudden appearance of these unknown forces. They had expected no resistance, but now they were faced with something they had never encountered before. "These creatures, they are not human," one of the alien commanders muttered, his voice laced with confusion and fear. "Who are they?" The leader of the defenders spoke, his voice booming across the battlefield like a thunderclap. "We are the last line of defense. We are here to end this." The words were simple, but they carried immense weight. The alien forces began to regroup, their commanders issuing orders to attack. But it was clear that they were now facing an enemy unlike any they had ever fought before. Without another word, the battle erupted. The defenders moved with deadly precision, their attacks swift and merciless. Their weapons glowed with power, releasing blasts of energy that cut through the air. Every strike was calculated, each move executed with the expertise of centuries of combat experience. They fought as one, a seamless unit with no hesitation or fear. Captain Reyes, watching from the command center, felt a surge of hope rise within her. These beings, whoever they were not just fighting for their own survival. They were fighting for humanity. The first clash between the defenders and the aliens was overwhelming. The alien forces, though powerful and numerous, were no match for the defenders' tactics and firepower. With each blow, the aliens were pushed back, their ranks thinning as they struggled to adapt to the relentless assault. The defenders moved through the battlefield like shadows, their weapons cutting down any alien in their path. Captain Reyes could hardly believe what she was witnessing. The invaders, once so sure of their victory, were now in retreat. But the battle wasn't over. The alien commanders, realizing their forces were faltering, began to regroup and launch a counterattack. The leader of the defenders stepped forward again, raising his weapon. The ground shook beneath his feet as a blast of energy shot from his weapon, hitting one of the alien ships directly. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The remaining alien forces faltered, clearly shaken by the power of their foes. But even as the defenders pushed forward, a new danger loomed on the horizon. As the battle raged on, a massive shadow loomed over the battlefield. The largest alien ship, the one that had initially launched the attack, began to shift and transform. It was unlike anything the defenders had seen before. This was not just a ship, it was a weapon, a mechanical monstrosity designed for destruction. The defenders paused for a moment, their focus shifting to the new threat. The battle for Verta 7 had just escalated, and the true test of humanity's last hope was about to begin. Humanity's strength. As the massive alien warship loomed overhead, casting a dark shadow over the battlefield, the defenders' initial victory began to feel like a fleeting moment. They had struck hard and fast, but the enemy's true weapon, their flagship, was still standing. The alien forces were regrouping, preparing for a final, desperate assault. The defenders, although formidable, knew that the battle was far from over. Captain Rice watched from the command center, her eyes fixed on the swirling chaos outside. The defenders were holding their own, but she knew they needed more. Humanity needed to show its strength, not just in the form of their deadly rescuers, but in the courage of the humans themselves. They had always been underestimated, but today, humanity's spirit would shine through. Inside the human shelters, people were huddled together, watching the battle unfold. Some were scared, others uncertain of what was happening, but there was one thing on their minds: survival. Rice knew that if they were going to win, the humans had to join the fight. She turned to Lieutenant Andra, her voice steady but urgent. "Send out the order. Tell every able-bodied person to grab a weapon and get to the front lines. We need them now more than ever." Andra looked hesitant for a moment, but then nodded. "Understood, Captain." At that moment, the call went out across the colony. Men, women, and even children who were capable of fighting began to prepare. They weren't soldiers, but they were humans, and they would fight for their home, their families, and their future. The fear in their eyes was replaced with determination, and the colony's defenses began to form once again, this time with humanity standing shoulder to shoulder with the defenders. On the battlefield, the defenders noticed the change. They saw the humans, not as fragile creatures to be protected, but as warriors in their own right. Humans weren't just surviving. They were fighting back. The first few civilians, armed with whatever they could find, rushed to the front lines, joining the defenders in their assault. They fought alongside the powerful beings with a surprising strength, their faces filled with defiance. Kale, the second in command of the defenders, watched this transformation with a curious eye. She had never seen anything like it before. Humans, with their relative fragility compared to the defenders, were standing their ground. They weren't waiting for someone else to save them. They were taking action. "They are not as weak as we thought," Kale said to her leader, a note of respect in her voice. The leader of the defenders nodded, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "Their greatest weapon is their will to survive. I've seen it in the galaxies before. Humanity will fight until the last breath. We cannot underestimate that." As the human fighters joined the fray, the alien forces began to feel the weight of their resistance. The alien commanders had underestimated the humans, believing them to be nothing more than helpless prey. But they were wrong. The humans fought with an intensity and fury that shocked their enemies. Every shot fired, every strike made, sent a message. Humanity would not go down without a fight. Captain Reyes joined the front lines herself, leading her team in a coordinated strike with the defenders. The aliens, caught off guard by the unexpected human resistance, were beginning to falter. It wasn't just the power of the defenders that was turning the tide. It was the raw, unrelenting spirit of humanity. As they fought, Reyes couldn't help but feel a growing sense of pride. It wasn't just the defenders who were saving them now. Humanity was proving its worth, showing that they were more than capable of standing alongside the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The tide was slowly turning in their favor, and the alien invaders began to retreat, clearly rattled by the unexpected strength of their opponents. But just as the humans and defenders gained ground, a new, terrifying challenge appeared. The alien flagship, now fully powered up, unleashed a massive energy pulse that shook the entire battlefield. The sky above turned red with the force of the blast, and for a moment, it seemed as if all hope was lost. "Fall back," one of the defenders shouted as the shockwave rippled across the ground, knocking many off their feet. The humans, caught in the blast, were thrown to the ground. But even in the face of such devastation, they didn't give up. Slowly, they began to rise, their will stronger than ever. They were not backing down. Captain Reyes stood tall, shaking off the effects of the blast. "We're not done yet," she shouted, rallying her team and the human fighters around her. "This is our planet. We fight to the end." With a renewed sense of purpose, the humans and defenders regrouped. Their combined strength was unstoppable. The alien invaders may have had advanced technology and vast numbers, but they had underestimated one thing: the strength of human resilience. And now, humanity was fighting back like never before. The turning point. The battle raged on, and the humans, along with their formidable defenders, fought with everything they had. They had already pushed the alien invaders back several times, but every time they thought victory was within reach, the aliens regrouped and counterattacked with devastating force. The battlefield was a chaotic mess of explosions, blaster fire, and the sounds of war. Captain Reyes, covered in dirt and sweat, wiped blood from her brow as she took stock of their situation. The alien forces were regrouping, preparing for their final push. But the humans and defenders weren't going to back down. They had come too far, and the stakes were too high. From the command center, Reyes could see the aliens' flagship floating ominously in the sky. It had been damaged, but was still operational, its dark silhouette against the burning sky, a constant reminder that the battle was far from over. "We need to end this," Captain Reyes said, her voice grim but resolute. "We've held them off, but if that ship isn't destroyed, it'll be over for us." Lieutenant Ander looked at her, concern evident in his eyes. "Captain, we've thrown everything we have at them, but their flagship is tougher than we thought. If we can't break through its defenses, we won't stand a chance." Reyes took a deep breath, her mind racing. She knew they needed to act fast. They had pushed the aliens to their limit, but they were still holding strong, ready to unleash everything they had in one final assault. That's when the ground shook again. This time, however, it wasn't an attack. It was something else. From the horizon, a bright light appeared. It wasn't the usual flash of an energy blast. It was something far more intense, something far more powerful. The sky above the battlefield was lit up with a blinding flash, and for a brief moment, everything stopped. The battle seemed to freeze in place, as if time itself had momentarily paused. And then, in the distance, a massive force appeared. The defenders' leader, standing tall on the front lines, turned his gaze toward the sky. The light grew brighter as another fleet of ships, even more powerful than the first wave, arrived. They were faster, more advanced, and their weapons glowed with a terrifying energy. The defenders' leader spoke into his communicator, his voice calm but filled with authority. "It's time. We will not let them take this planet." In an instant, the new fleet joined the fray, their ships slamming into the alien forces with incredible force. The alien flagship, already struggling, was overwhelmed by the sheer power of the defenders' reinforcements. The tide of battle shifted in an instant. Reyes watched, wide-eyed, As the battle shifted before her, the reinforcements had arrived, just in time. The new fleet of defenders attacked with precision, cutting through the alien ships and tearing their defenses apart. Each shot was a direct hit, each strike calculated to weaken the alien flagship. The aliens had no time to regroup or counterattack. Their overwhelming numbers were no match for the firepower and strategy of the defenders' second wave. The flagship, once thought indestructible, was now under siege. The alien forces tried desperately to fight back, but the defenders moved with deadly speed, outflanking the invaders on every side. It wasn't just the advanced technology of the defenders that gave them the advantage. It was their discipline, their unity, and their relentless pursuit of victory. But the alien commander, who had been overseeing the battle from his flagship, was not about to let this defeat come easily. He stood at the control center of his ship, glaring at the images of the battle unfolding before him. His fingers flew across the controls as he activated the last-ditch weapon hidden within the heart of the flagship. "Activate the superweapon," he commanded, his voice full of rage. "Destroy them all." The ground beneath Verta 7 trembled as the alien flagship unleashed its final attack. A massive, world-shattering energy beam aimed directly at the defenders. It was a last-ditch effort, a weapon of unimaginable power that could obliterate everything in its path. The defenders' leader saw the weapon charging and immediately made a split-second decision. "We'll take the hit," he said, his voice unwavering. "Everyone, brace yourselves." As the energy beam surged toward them, the defenders' ships moved to intercept, positioning themselves between the beam and the planet below. The sky was filled with the crackling energy of the beam as it collided with the ships. The blast was deafening, shaking the entire battlefield. The defenders' ships buckled under the force of the attack, their shields flickering as they absorbed the impact. The energy beam continued to surge, but it was clear that the defenders were pushing back, giving everything they had to protect humanity. Captain Rice stood frozen, her heart racing as the battle played out before her. The defenders were holding strong, but she knew the outcome was uncertain. The beam was relentless, and the defenders' ships were starting to falter. But then something incredible happened. With a final, mighty push, the defenders broke through. The beam shattered, the power of the alien flagship's weapon dissipating in a brilliant explosion. The alien ship was destroyed in an instant, reduced to nothing but debris and smoke. The battle was over. The final stand. The battlefield was a sea of smoke and debris. Silence followed the massive explosion that had obliterated the alien flagship. The once powerful invaders were now scattered, their fleets broken and retreating. The defenders' reinforcements had turned the tide of the battle, and the alien forces, realizing they were no match for the combined might of the defenders and humanity's resilience, were forced to retreat. Captain Rice, standing amidst the ruins of the battlefield, felt a sense of disbelief wash over her. For so long, they had been outmatched, hopelessly outnumbered. But now, thanks to the arrival of the defenders, they had won. Humanity had survived. The aliens had been pushed back, their plans for conquest shattered. But even as the alien forces retreated, Rice knew that this wasn't the end. It wasn't over until the last threat was eradicated, until the enemy was completely driven away from the colony. And though they had won this battle, there was still work to be done. She turned to the defenders' leader, who stood nearby, his armor battered but unyielding. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the devastation around them, but there was a quiet pride in his eyes. "We've done what we came here to do," the leader said, his voice steady, yet filled with respect. "But there is still work to be done. The aliens will not give up so easily. We must ensure that they never return." Captain Rice nodded. "We'll finish this. Together." The remaining alien ships, now fragmented and crippled, had begun their retreat into deep space. The last vestiges of the invaders were leaving Verta 7, but their retreat was not without finality. It was clear that the alien race would not rest until they had a second chance to conquer the planet. It was time for humanity to take matters into its own hands. The Defenders' leader turned to his fleet. "Prepare for pursuit," he commanded. "We will not allow them to regroup. This war ends today." As the Defenders' ships prepared for the pursuit, Captain Rice felt the weight of the moments settle on her. They had not only survived, they had fought back with everything they had, and humanity's spirit had proven stronger than anyone could have imagined. But now, they would finish the job. The battle for Verta 7 was over, but the war had only just begun. Captain Rice stood at the front of the command center, her face determined, her eyes focused. She could feel the eyes of the humans who had fought by her side, their respect for her unwavering. And she, in turn, had come to respect the strength of humanity, their will to survive, their bravery, and their refusal to back down. The Defenders, now leaving for the pursuit of the retreating alien fleet, offered their final respects. The leader of the Defenders approached Rice, bowing his head slightly. "You have proven yourselves today. I have seen the true strength of humanity, and I will carry that knowledge with me," he said. Rice nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "We couldn't have done it without you, but we'll keep fighting. Humanity always finds a way." With a final glance at the battlefield, the Defenders ascended back into their ships, preparing to hunt down the remnants of the alien fleet. The remaining humans, their homes still standing, began the task of rebuilding and healing. The Defenders were leaving, but they had left behind more than just a victory. They had given humanity a chance at a future, a chance to rise to even greater heights. As the ships of the Defenders disappeared into the stars, Captain Rice turned to her people, her voice steady as she spoke into the comms. "Today, we've shown the galaxy that we are more than just survivors. We are warriors. And as long as we stand together, nothing can defeat us." The people of Verta 7 and all of humanity cheered. They had been pushed to the brink of destruction, but they had proven something that would echo through the stars for generations. Humanity, no matter the odds, would never give up.